Welcome, and let's get started with tonight's webinar, Beginner Basic Notes and Highlighting. And the purpose of a webinar is to provide training for Logos Bible software. We're definitely going to do that tonight. We're going to provide training so you can study the topic for yourself. Occasionally, if it's relevant, we'll provide biblical insights related to the topic, though tonight we won't be doing so much of that since we're not studying a biblical topic. At times, the webinar can be fast-paced. We're including a lot of information to increase training value. Training at times may be complex with multiple steps. Other times, training will be easy to follow along with few steps. All webinars are recorded for purchase and review offline. And tonight, the presenter notes are a little different. We will not be including a personal book because of the nature of this webinar. All right. So tonight we're doing the beginner basics. Monday will be who are the Nephilim and Raphaim, and then Thursday 9/4, so a week from, 2 weeks from today, search strategies revised. So there's a lot that you can do now with searching in Logos, and we're going to walk through those new capabilities in Logos Bible software. All right, let's go ahead and jump into Logos Bible software. And just a couple things real quick. So why this topic? Organizing your research is one of the best ways to learn, keep relevant information, and save time later by avoiding researching what you previously discovered. And so this is the strategy here. So tonight's webinar is going to really help you think thoughtfully and give you some strategies to be more organized with all the information that you collect. So there's many tools in the tool belt that you're going to need to be familiar with. Let's walk you through those. So the first one, of course, since the topic is about notes and highlighting, is the Note program, the Note tool. So let's go to the main menu and click on the waffle icon. That's the 9 dots in the shape of a grid. Click on that once, and in the search box, just type in Note or Notes. You'll see an icon, a menu as well. Click on either. We'll go ahead and click on the Notes icon. And this is the first tool. Let me walk you through, overview what it is, how to understand it, and then we'll walk you through some other tools, and then we'll actually start using the tools. Now, what makes the Notes tool so overwhelming and confusing is the way it's organized. But once you understand this metaphor that I'm going to share, Notes will become super accessible. So think of a spiral notebook that you would purchase for school. You have a cover, you have the paper, and you have the content. If you understand that, that's how you need to understand the Notes tool. Now, over at the left, you'll see the hamburger menu. That's over here. And that's what gives you access to this menu right here. So right now, if I click it, it turns it off. And if I click it again, it turns it on. You definitely want this tool on at this point. Now, you notice there's a filter that's used for searching. So once you start creating notebooks and you create notes, you can do some searching for those and the content that's in there. Now, to the right of that filter icon is the notebook. That is most important, so click that. Now, this gives you access to 2 menus, items. There's the plus inside the circle, and then there's the search magnifying glass. You always want to create a notebook for your notes. Try to avoid creating notes without notebooks. When you do that, it's all chaos. You don't know where the note, it's here's a note, there's a note, everywhere's a note, and that will overwhelm you. So when we begin to plan, we always begin with a notebook. So I'm going to click the notebook icon. And then we're going to click the plus inside the circle. That's going to allow us to create a new notebook. So for tonight, let's just call this beginner, and we'll call it notes. All one word, beginner notes. Now I'm going to go ahead and press enter. I have a lot of notes, so it disappeared because the way Logos sorts things, it's numbers first, letters second. To find your note, just click search icon right here, and we can just type in a portion of that name, beginner, and there's our beginner notes. So now we've created the cover, all right? So we're building our spiral notebook digitally. And so now we've created the cover, and we've given a name, beginner notes. Go ahead and click on that. Now, as soon as you click on it, we don't have any paper. That's why at the right, it's all blank. So to create paper in the notebook, we go to the top right, and we click the blue button, New Note. Let's go ahead and click on that. Now, as soon as you do that, you're going to see 3 window panes. We have the cover at the far left, we have the paper in the middle, and then what you write on the paper, the content, is at the far right. So I'm just going to type in hello right there. And Logos conveniently gives you 2 lines of information. In fact, let's type in 3 just in case. As I thought, oh, there's 3. Let's go with 1 more just for the fun of it. Let's see how many it can take. Yeah, that's what I thought. 3 lines. So Logos gives you up to 3 lines of information. So if you type these first 3 lines, that's what you're going to see on these pieces of paper. So because of this, you want to use these first 3 lines as headings. In fact, I just like to have 1 line, and I'm just going to call this page 1, and I like to bold it. And I'm going to click on B after I select it. And this gives me a nice descriptive label. So you could do a title with a subheading if you wanted more details. And that's a very good option. And I wouldn't bold it, and that makes it a little bit easier. All right, so up to 3 lines, but really 1 or 2 lines is more than sufficient. So again, in review, you've got your cover at the left, you've got your piece of paper in the middle, and you got your details on that piece of paper at the far right. But there's a couple things you need to be aware of. Notice right here, so important. Whenever you open up a note, you want to look at this. This tells you the notebook that you're in. So if you open up a note randomly, you may or may not see this filled, but if it is filled, this tells you where it is. And this makes things very handy. Notice that you have some other information. Now, at this point, I like to have more writing room. So I'm going to click this little double arrow at an angle, and this allows me to just focus on my content. And again, if I click that again, it's a toggle switch. I get back to the 3 windows. And if I just want to see 2 windows, then I can click the hamburger menu, and now I've got a little more space to write, and I still got the page view. And you can move this to the left or right by grabbing that little bar. So this view may be helpful for you. Now, with the Logos notes, you have your standard formatting and styling, bold, italic, and all these things. So you can do quite a bit here. Notice you can insert images. That's very helpful. And here's where the font is right here. But you notice also that we have a drop-down menu for a note icon. So if we click it, you can see that we can choose an icon and a color for that icon. And these icons will appear in your resources to let you know and identify the types of notes. So if you want to be creative and have a structure where different notes are signified by different symbols and icons, you can do that. And that can be very useful. Then to the right, there's a do not symbol, and this is the highlighting style. I'm going to go ahead and just open up a Bible, pretty straightforward. And what I want to do is create a note. So here I am in Revelation 6:1. Now, there's a couple ways of doing this. I could just go over here and I can type something. In fact, I'm just going to right-click on Revelation 6:1 as a reference, choose style, and I'm going to paste that right in here. Okay? Now, that's putting content on the piece of paper, but we're not seeing any notes right here. We need to kind of add a note. Now, to do that, we can go to Notes here on the main menu, and we can choose Add a Note. Now, when we do that, notice what happened. The note that you are focused on, in this case, our notebook, Beginner Notes, added a piece of paper, and it also added the verse. And in doing so, we now have a highlight. So let's go ahead and change that icon, and we're going to change it to a paper clip. There it is, a paper clip, and paper clips are kind of gray, so let's change that to gray, and there we go. And now we have a paper clip icon to let us know there's a note there. Now, if you get rid of this Revelation 6:1, the note goes away because that was an anchor, and that was anchored to the actual verse. So be aware of that. If we change this to Revelation 6:2, all right, click Add a Note. The anchor says 6:2, so very, very useful. And I just love that feature. And by the way, we could go to verse 3, and even though we've moved it, it still says 6:2, so we need to click on that 3 to make sure this is changed. We can click the stoplight menu right here, and you'll see that a menu appears. We can show a new sermon document. We can add an anchor. Let me do that. And there's our active reference. We can say done. And now we've got Revelation 6:3 as well as 6:2. But notice that the note is primarily 6:2. That's the first one. So in order for more notes to appear, I'm going to remove this anchor. I'm going to create a new note. All right. And I'm going to change this anchor from 6.1. All right. So we got our 6.2. I'm going to go to the other note. Let me do this again. I'm going to click new note. Let me go to 6.3. Okay. And click new note. And now I've got my anchor at 6.3. So it's a little wonky how Logos does this. But the key is I think the easiest way is just create a new piece of paper, but don't create that paper till you're in the location you want to be. And that makes it easier for the note icon to appear. Now you can get overwhelmed pretty quickly with notes. So over at the right, you have under notes this show notes and highlights. If you click on it, you're going to see all my notes are selected. And I have a toggle switch. So if I untoggle it, notice my notes goes away. And this can throw you off. You can think, there's no notes, John. But there is. Click on here, click on the toggle switch, and you're good to go. Now, you may have specific notes you want on and off. I have them all on. So just be aware that you can do that. So beginner notes, we'll scroll down to the beginner notes, and we can uncheck that. And now the paper clips have gone away. We check it, and it's right back again. So we do have the ability to specify which note to turn on and which note to turn off. Very, very helpful. Okay, so that's the basics of a note. Very straightforward in creating a note. All right, when it comes to naming, I recommend naming the note after the passage or passage range you're studying. Always, whenever possible, associate the notes with the name of the verse you're studying. It's going to come in handy later. Or if you can't, choose a name, preferably something from Factbook. That way you're using some standard naming conventions, and that will help you be more organized. All right, we'll come back to notes, but for now, let's walk through some other essential researching tools for the tool belt. The next one is the highlighting tool. So we're going to go to tools again, and this time we're going to type in the word hi. And we'll see under the menu highlighting. Let's click that. Now, the purpose of highlighting is for you to document what you're studying. You might want to highlight a word, a phrase, a paragraph, etc. This is to visually draw attention to what you want. Whereas notes is really designed to aggregate and organize and summarize information. And we'll come back to that in a minute. And we'll do an example of this. For notes, for highlights right now, I'm going to pause and just introduce it. We're going to come back and show you some features. The next tool that you're going to need when it comes to notes and highlighting is the clippings document. So we're going to go to Documents. We're going to go over to the right where it says New, click on it, and we're going to choose Clippings. Now, clippings is a wonderful tool, and what it's used for is to grab and go. So let me open up a commentary, pretty straightforward here at the right. And let's say I read this paragraph and I go, man, that's gold. So I select the paragraph. And in a separate window, I always want to have clippings in a separate window. If I have clippings on top, then this won't work very easily. See, I'll select the text, I'll go to clippings, and my add clipping won't work. So I'm going to drag it over to the left. Now my text is selected and my window's open. I now have the add clipping button. So be aware of that. That can really throw you off. We'll click it. And notice what happens. Once I click add clipping, all the content I selected is added in a little card. Remember the 4x6 little cards we had to use in the library. That's what this is. We have a link back to the resource here at the top left, right here. We have when we actually did it. We have the section title. You can see that's right here. We have the content that we grabbed. That's all right here. And then we have the reference listed here. We have a tag. So if you want to add additional items to search, you can do that. And then we have the notes right here. So if we click on notes, we can make a few more comments. And if we click the little arrow at the bottom right that appears when we float our mouse over it, we get the bibliographic information, which you can copy. Notice that if you click that arrow again, it takes us back to the front of the card. So we're collecting a lot of information along the way, which is very helpful. Don't forget, with clippings, you need to give it a name, just like you do with notes. So let's choose Revelation 6:1 through 8. And this is the beginning of naming conventions. Notice I picked a verse. So I'm going to go back to beginner notes, and I'm going to change that name. How do we do that? Well, let's click on the double arrow. Make sure we got the full menu. There it is. Click on the hamburger menu, and there's the cover. We click the 3 dots, and we can choose rename. And now we're going to call this Revelation 6:1 through 8. Press enter. And now our notebook has been renamed. Very handy. So we're going to continue to name things this way as we demonstrate. The next tool, and again, if you got questions, don't hesitate to type those in there. We'll follow up with you as soon as possible. The next one is passage list. So once again, we're going to go to Documents on the main menu. We're going to click New, and we're going to choose Passage List. And again, we're going to give it a name. So we'll click here, and we'll type in Revelation 6, 1 through 8, and press Enter, and there we go. Notice it put a 2 in there, and that's because this is the second document. Tools is a little bit different. That is labeled, so we get a 2. Now, if you don't like the numbers, then what I recommend is put in this case, since we're doing passage list, we put in P for passage list. We can go to Revelation, clippings, and we could put a C in there. And that's just a different way of identifying what you've got. Now, the passage list is really handy. So as you're studying, you may come across key cross-references. So if we look at this first paragraph, here's some cross-references. I kicked off a search by accident, so let me back off. Let me reselect the text, and we've got all these cross-references in here. Now that we've done that, the Add option becomes available in the passage list. We click on it, and we can say Selected Text. And now all those verses have been extracted for us. I love that feature, really neat. So as you're studying, when it comes to saving cross-references, the passage list is the way to go. All right, let's continue to another document, and that is Canvas or sentence diagramming. We're just going to show the new Canvas tool. So we'll click on Documents. Once again, click on the blue New button, and then we're going to choose Canvas. And when Canvas opens up, it opens up to a full screen, like something like this. Now let's go ahead and insert a passage, but since I already have this diagram, let me just go ahead and open up mine. What I'm going to do is just go to my Canvas and find the most recent one. There we go. It's probably this one, Untitled Canvas. Yep, sure enough, there it is. All right, so there's my Canvas. Assume we brought in the text and all that good stuff. Over here at the right, we need to give it a name, so Revelation. Okay, and then 6, 1 through 8. Now this is Canvas. We can't use C for clippings, so we just put in Canvas. That works pretty good. And press Enter, and now we've got a name. If you wanted to insert a passage, just click Insert Passage, type it in, you're good to go. I'm going to right-click right here on the tab, and then choose Doc This tab. All right, so notice that what we're doing, we're collecting a variety of documents. Now, this particular Canvas that we're looking at has my block diagram and my preliminary outline, and that's going to come in handy as I study this passage later. Now, besides Canvas, there's 2 other documents. There's the bibliography tool. So let's do that. We're going to go to Documents once again, go to the top right, click New, and we're going to choose Bibliography. And once again, we're going to give it a name, Revelation 6, 1 through 8, and we'll put in B for bibliography and press Enter. Now, the purpose of the bibliography tool is to keep track of the resources that you're using as you study. This can help you later when you need to go back and find them. So I'm going to left-click on the Bible Knowledge Commentary and just drag that right on top of my bibliography, and there it is. But watch this. I'm going to close the resource. I'm now going to double-click on it, and notice it opened up to the spot I was at when I was studying. Very helpful. And if you click on it once, you get access to notes, and you can make some comments. Like you can say, this was awesome resource, something like that. Or, read this first. Or you could say, nothing good here. Whatever you want, you can type it in here. And that can be very handy. And when you go to print it out, you can see these little notes. Let me go to File, Print there. And there's the note. All right. And you can click on Bibliography Only, and that will hide the note. So very helpful resource. And this can be really helpful down the road when you're building bibliographies. Okay. Let me just go ahead and get rid of that. All right. So as you're studying, you're saving these books that you're using. Very helpful. And then one more. Should any of you be teaching or preaching and you make a final sermon, you're going to want to have a sermon document. So let's click on Documents. We're going to click New, and we'll go all the way down to Sermon. For Verbum users, you're going to see Homily. So we'll click on Sermon. And again, now sermons are going to be a little bit different. You're going to want to actually put in the sermon, but you definitely want to have the cross-reference somewhere in the sermon title. So for now, we'll just put in Revelation 6, 1 through 8. and really is about the four horsemen. So, four horsemen of the apocalypse. There we go. And we could put in parentheses, etc. But at least we got that passage in there. So if you end up developing a sermon, you want to put this in here as well. Now, let me pause here and explain to you what I'm doing. So we're researching, we're studying a passage, we're collecting information. It's easy to get overwhelmed by all the information. So Logos has these tools that are really specialized tools for collecting and organizing. So that's why we're doing this. A sermon should not be in your notes. It should be in the sermon document. Your bibliography, list of research, should be in the bibliography document. Your diagramming, separate document. Your key passages. Now, they may spill over to your sermon and other notes and things like that, but at least you've got a comprehensive list of all the key passages. And of course, we have the clippings. But how does this all connect to the notes and highlighting? This is where things get very interesting. So let's now move to the next part of this presentation where we talk about the best practices. All right, so we've already mentioned a few of them. Create a notebook always. Name the notebook after a passage, a fact book topic, or, as we're going to see here in a minute, a highlighting palette. That's what these are called, palettes, and then within the palettes, there's these styles. So we want to name our notebook after these if we're going to connect our highlighting to a notebook, which we will in a few moments. In fact, let's go ahead and do that right now and show you how to leverage the highlighting tool. Okay, so we've created this Revelation 1 through 8 passage. And let's say you're going to use the highlighting tool. Now, I recommend creating a new palette based on the passage you're studying. This is one strategy. Now, you may not want to do it for just the chapter, you do it for the whole book. So let's click on New Palette. And instead of Revelation 6, 1 through 8, let's just do Revelation. And this is what I recommend, creating a palette for every book of the Bible. So we'll press Enter, and again, Logos will sort this alphabetical. So there's Revelation. Now we need to create some styles. And this is where we want to begin to be very specific. Now, if we want to duplicate some stuff and reuse it, we could certainly do that. We could expand the colors here. We could hit the drop down. We could duplicate, and then we could relabel that Revelation, and we can get all those. So if you're reusing a standard palette with different styles, that would be a good strategy. But if you're creating something totally new and from scratch, then this would be the approach. Now, this is a little bit of overkill, but I just want to let you know this is one approach of many. So here we are at Revelation, and I'm going to click the drop-down arrow, and I'm going to add a style. You first create the palette, and then you create styles. And we're going to, right here, this window opens up, and we need to give a name for a style. So I'm just going to say, let's just say important, okay? That's what this first one is, important note. Let's just leave it as important. Now, that's the name of it. And then I got to work through these menus. Now, for font styling, we can just leave it as it is. Notice that we have a preview box. This is what it's going to look like. So if we wanted to change that and make it bold, we can do that. If we want to change the font to Algerian, we can do that. We have all these options. Let's stick with Arial, and let's not bold it. All right, so that's pretty straightforward, but you got the options there. And we could expand the window to make it a little bit easier so you can see more of the window. The background is going to be the background color. Right now we have no background. We could choose a solid color like yellow. I like yellow. We could do that, but I really prefer the natural highlighter. So let's choose that, and then we can choose our color. Let's make it a little bit lighter. There we go, and now we can see that in our view. So we just work our way through this. Now, we can add text effects. I really don't recommend this unless you got a real good reason. We can make it glow. We can make it outline. We can add shadows. All these things just add visual chaos to the screen. So very rarely have I used these, but be aware that you have them. Then we have borders and lines. This can be very handful. Notice we have solid, so we can do dot, jagged, rippled, single, double, triple. Then notice we can choose the line. Here's the width right here. We can choose the color of the line, make it red, and then we choose the placement. So if we wanted to underline the word, we could click it, and there it is. We've got a double underline. Pretty cool. If we click it again, that disables it, and then we can just click anywhere else, and we're good to go. This is the bottom border. You can put them in the front and so forth. So very powerful tool. Let's just underline the very word itself. All right, borders and lines. Then the image. Now you can click to choose right here, and Logos has some standard images, and we can grab all those. They're pretty handy. There's a checkbox, and that's what it looks like beforehand. And you can choose the placement, left, before, start, center, etc. You can also make it above, below, superscript, subscript. You can also do some coloring, and that can add and enhance what we're doing. So I'm going to go with the red, and then we can kind of change the